Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness coaching company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be the hot flashes, the night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or that weight gain around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere despite you not changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet it feels like nothing is working. In fact, it feels like you put in all this effort and you're just moving backwards. But we know now that your body is inherently different now that you've gone through those hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life, so you can reach those health and fitness goals, feel in control and at home in your body, live a life full of vitality, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today I have a wonderful topic to cover, and I want to talk about how pursuing fat loss and what happens to your hormones when you are dieting. So when you cut your calories, because again, it's January, we all have these big health and fitness goals that we want to accomplish, right? This is typically what happens with the New Year's resolutions. But I think it's really important to understand what actually happens during the process of cutting your calories, of trying to lose weight to your hormones, and then how's that going to impact you now that you're in perimenopause and menopause in the years that follow? What does that mean for long-term fat loss success and things that you're going to have to learn to navigate because of these new changes? So before I dive into all of that, I do want to remind you that we do have our menopause fat loss group coaching program that is starting next week. So this is the last week that we're taking applications. There is a fat loss focus, and we do an assessment when you join. If your body isn't quite ready for fat loss, and you're going to go into the metabolism boosting stream to make sure that your body is actually primed for fat loss, get your body good at burning calories, addressing any hormonal imbalances, any symptoms that you're dealing with, your gut health, your energy, the cravings, all of those things, make sure that that's solid so that you can go into fat loss. And when you lose the weight, you actually keep it off. If your assessment shows that you actually are ready for fat loss, then you get to dive right into that, right into January, build momentum the right way, making sure that we are avoiding all these hormonal issues that I'm going to talk about today to make sure that you don't gain the weight back, make sure that you have permanent fat loss and you're feeling your best. And of course, you're guided by a coach. Each coach is going to have a maximum of 5 to 6 people, and they're dedicated to you, your journey. Everything is customized. There is nothing cookie cutter. There is no sample meal plans that are the exact same for everybody else. It is all customized to you. Your nutrition-wise, you have access to workouts. There's bi-weekly calls. You have access to your coach. There are so many resources so that you don't have to think. We give you exactly what you need for your body, help you learn your body. So again, you can lose weight and keep it off for good. So let's dive into all the hormones things, right? Because you may have done diets in the past and it's been really rewarding to, see your body change. That hard work finally paying off. But we know as we go through perimenopause and menopause, we put in all this effort and it's just, doesn't quite work as well. We're seeing that it's not awesome, right? We're not feeling quite as lighter as we would have in the past with this diet or whatever strategy or thing you're doing, right? You're not feeling quite as strong, not as energetic, not seeing the scale move as much as you want, right? We're seeing changes now that you're in this time of your life. And before you get too carried away with, whatever fad diet, the cutting calories, the cutting the carbs, the doing the keto, maybe you're hopping on Weight Watchers again, the Optavias, whatever fad diet you are following, it's really, really important to understand what happens to your hormones, how it's going to be impacted, because that's going to have long-term consequences. This is why we see so many women come to us in a not so great state because they didn't understand these things. And it's really important to do that. So there are some key hormones that we're going to cover today. We're going to cover insulin, so our blood sugar control. We're going to cover cortisol and norepinephrine. We're going to cover ghrelin and leptin, estrogen, progesterone, thyroid, testosterone, and growth hormone, because all those things are going to massively impact your ability to lose weight. It's going to impact your fat storage, right? How your body's storing fat, and if it wants to store fat, which for most of us, it does, right? Especially now we've gone through perimenopause and menopause. And so again, understanding these things is really important. So let's tackle insulin first. What does insulin actually do? I did a whole podcast on insulin and cortisol not that long ago that you can head back to. But to sum it up, insulin is something that is produced in your pancreas. It is responsible for it gets activated when it sees a rise in your blood sugars. If blood sugars go up, we're going to see insulin come in because its job is to allow glucose to enter the cells, that sugar, where it's used for energy in our body and stored as glycogen in our liver and our muscles. So that's our body needs that, right? That's how our body uses energy. However, when there is excess glucose or our body isn't able to shuttle those into the cells because our body's more insulin resistant, now that glucose is going to be stored as fat. So it's not the glucose and the carbs that are making you overweight. It's your body's inability to listen to insulin and insulin being able to open the doors to allow glycogen to be stored in your muscles and your liver, right? It's not the glucose and the glycogen itself. It's your body's inability to do that properly. So what you need to know about perimenopause and menopause is that during perimenopause and menopause, these hormonal shifts, predominantly that declining estrogen, but also your progesterone, can actually make insulin resistance worse. So what happens is you eat food, any food, not just carbs. This happens with protein. This happens with fat. It also happens when you're not eating and you're in a stress state. Your body is going to dump sugar into the bloodstream. So whether it's from food or from that stress response, dumping sugar into your bloodstream. So now we see sugar goes up. Insulin's like, your body's like, oh, we need to get rid of this sugar. It's too high. So your body's like, okay, insulin, come do the job. So insulin's almost like the Uber Eats guy, comes and grabs that sugar, knocks on the door of the cells, opens it, and allows that sugar to go in. But what happens with insulin resistance is your body isn't listening to the knocking on the door. So it requires way more insulin to have a louder knock to open the door. But in the meantime, the sugar is accumulating. Your body's like, we need to get rid of this. And so what it does is then it takes it to fat. It stores it as fat. Which is not a good thing, right? That's not what we want. And so everyone's like, okay, I got to eat less carbs. But in fact, what we're seeing is this happens when you're eating protein. This happens when you're eating fat. It depends on the type of food, the type of carbs that you're eating, right? How much fiber you're having. This also has to do with like drinking your calories as well. And stress. When you are in a stress state from under eating, from over exercising, from fasting, from skipping meals, all of that is going to increase your cortisol, which is going to tell your body, hey, we're stressed out and we need energy. So it breaks down muscle, turns it into sugar, puts it into your bloodstream. So this is where cutting calories and being super low carb and, fasting all the time can actually be detrimental and cause insulin resistance. And unfortunately, when estrogen starts to decline, we become more insulin resistant. So our body is not as good at listening to the knocking on the door now. Right? So it makes blood sugar harder to control and more likely to result in fat storage, especially in our abdomen. That's where our body typically likes to hold it, especially in women. So when estrogen declines, we're losing that insulin sensitivity. Then when progesterone declines, we can see destabilized blood sugar and worsened insulin resistance as well, which can actually amplify more cravings and energy dips. And I don't know about you, but when your energy is low and you start having those cravings, it's really hard to be like, I'm not going to have chocolate. I'm going to have a salad. That doesn't happen, right? And then we also have that cortisol interplay where I talked about when cortisol's high, it dumps sugar into our bloodstream by breaking down muscle, right? But we know that when your body is stressed out, now that your estrogen is lower, it takes a lot less stress for cortisol to go up. So before you could handle a 9 out of 10 before cortisol went up and started dumping sugar into your bloodstream. Now it's only a 5 out of 10. So now the fasting that you're doing, the cutting the calories, the cutting the carbs, the doing a bunch of exercise is too much of a stress on what your body can actually handle now, because that's more than a 5 out of 10. Because then you're also adding on top of that, you're not sleeping well, not getting enough protein. You've got financial stress. You've got stress at home from like juggling career and trying to be a mom. And maybe you're a taxi mom, right? Taking your kids everywhere. Maybe you've got crazy deadlines at work. Maybe there's grief and loss and you're an empty nester now. There's so much stress, right? And then the fasting, the cutting calories, cutting carbs is really putting you over that 5 out of 10. So now we're seeing this rise in cortisol, which is going to cause blood sugar to rise, which is going to cause insulin resistance if we are not, properly dealing with this. So it's this vicious cycle of like, okay, I need to eat food, but I don't want to spike my blood sugars too high. But then if I'm not eating enough and I'm not getting enough carbs or I'm fasting, that's also going to pump up my blood sugars, and it's going to be more amplified and more easy to see this cycle when estrogen declines. So how does cutting your calories affect your insulin? Well, I mentioned a little bit about this, right? Calorie restriction is going to influence there's positives and negatives when it comes to how it's going to impact your insulin. And it's going to depend on the severity and the duration of your deficits. This means how low you're cutting your calories and how long you're there for. So a positive effect, short-term calorie restriction, short duration, not too severe. So we're not dropping our calories a ton. Like we're not dropping down to 1200. We're just doing a modest drop of where your maintenance should be. But the thing is, a lot of you are already eating too low, right? So in a modest deficit, short term, so we're talking no longer than 12 weeks. For a lot of women, it's actually shorter than that. We see that it can actually improve your insulin sensitivity, meaning that your body is using insulin more effectively. So it doesn't need as much insulin knocking on the doors, which can help stabilize your blood sugars, which can help reduce fat storage. For women with insulin resistance, which is very common during perimenopause and menopause, a moderate calorie restriction, and I mean I'm talking 15%, right? Like this is not a big calorie drop. We're talking 200 calories, maybe 300 max. Like it's not a big drop. But a lot of you are like, oh, I need to drop my calories, but that's already too low. Like you're already at 1600. That's too low. Like we need to bring you up to where you need to be because 1600 calories is where this moderate deficit should be. But your body's so used to being there that's now your maintenance. And if we drop lower than that, it's too much of a stress response, increasing cortisol, which is going to cause issues with our blood sugar. So we know that a moderate deficit, if you are in a good position before you drop calories, which by the way, if you are exhausted, you're waking up during the nighttime, you're struggling with energy and cravings in the afternoon, you are dealing with hot flashes, the night sweats, the other hormonal symptoms, you're dealing with bloating, you are having the brain fog, the memory issues, more erratic mood swings, you are not in a place to cut calories. That tells me your body is not ready. So we actually need to increase your calories first, slowly, strategically, so you don't gain weight. All that we're doing is really priming your body for fat loss, improving your metabolism, your hormone balance, your gut health, all of those things. So if you're in a good place, a moderate calorie restriction for a short period of time can be helpful for your insulin levels. However, for most women, that's not where we are, right? I'd mentioned you're already eating too low calorie. So what we see is if you're cutting your calories too low and for too long, or you've been doing this for a lot of time, so if you've had multiple fat loss attempts, what we see is blood sugar fluctuations. So severe calorie restrictions, people are like, it's not that low. 1,400 calories, 1,500 calories, 1,200 calories, too low. I was talking to a woman today that she's like, I thought for sure I was eating 1,600 calories. I was lucky to get 1,000. It's so eye-opening when you actually track. But what we see is this is going to cause irregular blood sugars because sometimes you're in a really low calorie state. Sometimes you're really high calorie state, right? This is going to be causing a ton of issues because your body has no idea when it's going to get enough sugar because that's what our body likes to survive on. 80% of our body functions on carbohydrates. That's what our body's natural fuel source is. And this can lead to high and low blood sugar. It's going to lead to, feeling low energy, dizziness, cravings for quick energy foods like our chips and our sodas and our donuts and our chocolates, all of those things. So we see that if you've had a history of diets where you've done multiple diet attempts, you've dieted for longer than 12 weeks, you've dropped your calories a lot more than where you should have, you've dropped carbs way too low in the past, you are likely going to struggle with blood sugar fluctuations and increased insulin resistance. And so this was already happening. And then boom, once your estrogen starts to decline, your blood sugar control gets worse. And it reveals that you were already struggling with this before. It's like estrogen just pulled back the curtain when she left. And it's like, ta-da, this is what your body was dealing with. So it's not menopause that caused it. It has lowered the threshold and really shown you what you were already dealing with before. You just weren't aware of it because estrogen was able to mask those issues for you. And then we also see when we are dealing with these low calorie states and being in low calorie for too long or multiple attempts is that it really forces your body to break down muscle for energy. Like I mentioned, when that stress response goes up, which is a lot easier during perimenopause and menopause, your body breaks down muscle for energy. And we know the more muscle you have, the more insulin sensitive you are. The less muscle you have, the more insulin resistant you become. So as you lose muscle mass when you're aging, which by the way, we lose up to 10% of our body's muscle mass in the 3 to 4 years before you go 1 year without a cycle. That's massive. And so when we lose that muscle mass, our body becomes more insulin resistant. And we see this muscle loss continue through menopause and the years that follow. So this is why we need to make sure we're eating enough food and not being in a low calorie state for too long, because we see this massive rise in insulin resistance because of the stress response, the loss of estrogen, and the muscle loss that accompanies that. So here are some signs of insulin imbalances to watch for. Feeling tired after meals. That's a big one. If you feel tired after meals, this means we're probably dealing with some blood sugar issues. If you are having persistent cravings, especially for sweets, the chips, the donuts, the chocolates, the sodas, all of those kinds of things. If you struggle to lose weight, particularly around the belly. If you are having energy crashes or shakiness between your meals, and you are hungry often despite eating quote unquote enough. Those are all signs that like insulin resistance is probably starting to happen for you. So how can you optimize insulin, avoid becoming insulin resistant when you are cutting your calories? Well, we want to counteract the negative stress response, right? That comes from cutting calories, cutting carbs, as well as that decreased stress tolerance that we have now that estrogen has declined. So one, we want to make sure that we are choosing balanced meals. This means having protein. So if you're looking at your plate, you are having a third of your plate be protein. Then you are having fiber. You know what fiber comes in the form of? Carbs. So we are having a third of your plate be, some whole grains, maybe some rice. We've got veggies also are going to make up another third of our plate. So we're getting fiber from those. I don't worry too much about fats because it comes from our sauces. It comes in the proteins that we eat. It's very easy to come by. But having enough protein and veggies in your meal and the fiber is going to help slow down digestion. So why is this important? The faster something empties your stomach and digests, the higher the blood sugar spike, because that sugar is being broken down more quickly from that meal. So we want to slow down digestion. How do we do that? Eating most of your protein and veggies before dipping into your carbs makes the biggest difference. So let's say you're going to have a wrap. You're not going to break apart the wrap, eat the protein first, right? Maybe you're just having some veggies and dip before. Maybe you are having a little bit of protein before. Maybe you're having some chickpeas, like roasted chickpeas. Maybe you're having veggies and hummus or veggies and dip. Maybe you're having just, a hard-boiled egg, like just a little bit of protein and some veggies to help slow digestion, and then have the carbohydrates. Because if you eat the carbs first, that blood sugar spike is going to be higher. And blood sugar spikes are not bad. This is what happens when we eat. We just want to make sure that we're not having a massive spike and a massive drop that follows. When we're choosing our carbs, we're aiming for whole grain complex carbs. So we've got the whole grains, we've got the legumes, veggies, quinoa, oats, fruit, all of those excellent sources of carbohydrates. The next thing to help support your insulin levels while being in a calorie deficit is to make sure you're not doing an extreme deficit. So stick to a moderate calorie reduction. We're talking 10 to 20% below your maintenance, but you first need to know where your actual maintenance is. This is the big issue that we see with women. And this is why when we're running this fat loss group coaching, we do the assessment first. We get you to track your food for a few days. So then we can see how far off are you from your actual calculated maintenance where you should be. And also, what are your symptoms? Are we getting enough protein? All of these things. Because if those things aren't set and you try to cut your calories, it'll be too low. You're not going to see changes. You're going to have worse energy. You're going to get worse results, if any at all. And nothing sucks more than cutting your calories and not seeing changes, because that sucks, because food is great, right? So we need to know if you are eating at a good maintenance first, because most women are not. So you have kind of two options here. You can just do our calorie calculation call. So you can book one of those and we will do that for you. Or you can join the group coaching and then have support from a coach for 8 weeks to get you to where you need to be, or if you're already there, teach you how to lose weight and keep it off the right way without dealing with all these hormonal issues. Then we have prioritizing strength training. Remember, we talked about building muscle is important because muscle keeps us insulin sensitive, less likely to store fat because we have more area for sugars to be stored in muscle as opposed to fat, which is really important. So making sure that you're actually doing resistance training. And this isn't doing 15 reps, 16 reps, 20 reps with 5-pound weights. We are talking, you are lifting heavy. You are challenging yourself. So let's say you're working in the 6 to 8 rep range. If you can do more than 11 reps, so 3 above where your end rep range is, you need to lift heavier or move a lot slower, because by the end of those 8 reps, the next 3 should be challenging and like very hard to do that 11th rep, right? That 3rd rep is really hard if you can do it at all. Because a lot of you aren't working hard enough. If you are not working hard enough where the last few reps are challenging, it's not helpful. You're just doing cardio at that point. You're not building muscle because your body has no reason to put on muscle or even maintain it. It can already do what you're asking it to do, so there's no reason for it to change. So really what you're doing is you're working to get to those last 3 challenging reps 6, 7, 8. The first reps are just to get you there so that you can see change. Because if your body's like, man, every week, like stuff's trying to lift a little bit heavier, really challenging us, we should probably adapt to be able to do the thing that she wants us to do. If I'm not pushing myself hard enough, it doesn't matter, or my body's not going to change because it has no reason to. This is how strength training works. So you want to do the same workout every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday. You are doing one exercise, your squats, your lunges, whatever it might be. You're doing your 8 reps, and then you're sitting for 2 minutes. And if you're like, oh, 2 minutes is too long, I don't need it, guess what? You didn't work hard enough. That means you have to lift heavier, lift more slowly. Maybe you're pausing at the bottom, really focusing on squeezing so that you need those 2-minute rests. If you don't need the 2-minute rest, you aren't challenging yourself hard enough. And a lot of people are not okay with that. Like they would rather rest less, but you need, like, that's how it's a telltale sign. Are you actually challenging yourself in a way that's going to cause your body to change? Most of us are not. The next thing that we need to do when we are in a deficit to help avoid seeing insulin resistance long-term is incorporating carb timing. So making sure that you are having carbohydrates pre and post-workout, really important, because during perimenopause and menopause, when estrogen declines, it's really hard to be able to access energy stores. So you need a quick hit of carbohydrates. And because you're exercising, you're using it right away, which is great. So we're not going to see the same blood sugar spike and drop as we would if we were having that later. So this is, having maybe a rice cake, having some fruit, something that's going to digest quickly and get into that bloodstream. Having carbohydrate post-workout is really great because when you've actually challenged yourself hard enough, if you haven't challenged yourself hard enough, this doesn't work because you need a certain intensity to really activate this. But basically you have these GLUT4s, or like little doggy doors in your muscle cells that will open without the use of insulin to allow sugar to go into the muscle cells and be stored there as glycogen for the next workout. So you're not seeing this rise in insulin, and therefore you're not seeing as big of a risk of becoming insulin resistant. So having carbs post-workout, very helpful. And then of course, you're always wanting to make sure that you are having the protein and veggies first at all your other meals before having your carbs. You want carbs at every meal, complex carbs, obviously. Never having carbs on its own. The next one is you're always managing stress in a fat loss phase. Always, always, always. We're going to talk about this in every single hormone that we talk about today. And this is because we know that when stress goes up, cortisol goes up, blood sugar is going to go up, insulin resistance will go up long term. And we're always in a state of chronic stress from everything that we have in life, from chronic dieting, under eating, over exercising, cutting our carbs because carbs help lower cortisol, which is very important to know. From not sleeping enough, from rushing around and deadlines and grief and trauma and taking care of everybody else and always on the go and eating on the run and skipping our lunch breaks. And maybe we're skipping meals here and there. And sometimes calories are high and sometimes calories are low. And sometimes we hit protein and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we have a donut and sometimes we don't. Like all of this chaos is so much stress on your body, and cutting calories is an additional stress. So anyone who is in a fat loss phase who works in our program, a non-negotiable is that we're doing at least 5 minutes of de-stressing, like ideally 2 times a day, because we need to do something to bring your heart rate down, bring your breathing rate down, to pull you into that rest and digest portion of your nervous system so that we're not running high on cortisol and then seeing fat accumulation despite cutting calories, which is not cool, right? So this is something that's really massive. So, maybe you're journaling, maybe you're doing some prayer and devotional time. Maybe you are journaling. Maybe you are doing meditation and yoga or mobility. Maybe you're doing crossword puzzles or a puzzle, knitting, crocheting, whatever that looks like for you. But it's something that brings your heart rate down, your breathing rate down. So exercise is not a form of stress management in this scenario. And then taking diet breaks. This is massive, where you are dropping your calories and then you're coming back up towards maintenance to help reset your insulin sensitivity and support long-term fat loss. And the question I always get is like, okay, well then what does fat loss look like? Super individualized, because I need to know, is your metabolism going to adapt quickly in a reverse? So when we're increasing your calories, is your metabolism jumping up quickly with it so you're not gaining weight during your reverse diet? Or do we have to go slowly because when you up your calories, your body wants to store fat? So we need to figure out how does your body respond on the way up, and then we need to know how does your body respond on the way down. When you're cutting your calories, so you drop it to 1600, how quickly does your body's maintenance go from 2000 to 1600 where then we stop seeing changes? Because that's going to dictate how long we stay in fat loss. And then are we doing a couple of days maybe every 10 days, we're doing 2 days of a higher calorie intake. Maybe after 3 weeks, we're doing a week at maintenance and then dropping back down. I can't tell you because I have no idea what your body's metabolism looks like. And this is why we spend so much time with clients learning their bodies, teaching them, okay, so because your body's doing this tells me this is how we're going to do this. And because now I know how your body responds on the way up, and now I know how your body responds on the way down, I know what your fat loss cycles look like. I know what your body's going to respond best to. I know how to get the best results without stressing out your body. But again, there's no textbook answer for that. Reverse dieting is a lot easier to give you outlines for a fat loss phase. It is so individualized that it is very hard to give someone general outline because it doesn't work that way. This is why the fad diets don't work long-term. This is why Weight Watchers worked and now it's not working for you anymore. This is why Optavia worked and now it's not working for you. This is why the keto worked and now it's not working for you. This is why the fasting worked and it's not working for you, because they're so generalized, and that's not how we are, right? We don't even all learn the same. We don't like the same music. And that's just what we like. What our body responds to and what's best for our body is going to vary drastically based on your specific physiology, but also your lifestyle and what's realistic for you, right? So I can't give you an exact outline of what fat loss looks like because I'm not comfortable giving you information that could harm you, right? I'm going to give you information and guidelines based that I feel confident on, because the ethical rule is always do no harm is number one, right? So I'm never going to do something that would risk someone having adverse health effects. I'm not okay with that. So that's insulin. Now we're into cortisol. So primary function of cortisol, you guys have heard me talk about it so much. Again, I did a podcast on cortisol and insulin together that you should go listen to. It's fantastic. I loved it so much. And then an inflammation one prior to that. It's not that far back. I think it's like 3 weeks ago. So cortisol, primary function, it's your fight or flight response. It's survival. It keeps you safe and it responds to physical or emotional stress. It doesn't know that it's not running from a bear and that you're just doom scrolling on your couch, that you just had a fight with your spouse, or that you just feel bad about your body that day. It's like, oh, stress, bear, right? It has a daily rhythm. So ideally, cortisol is supposed to be higher in the morning and then dip down slowly and then stay low over nighttime. And then when it peaks, that's when you wake up. So if you're waking up in the middle of the night, your cortisol is peaking way too early. And that's part of the problem. And that's how we know we're struggling with stress issues. And this is why blood work sucks for assessing cortisol, because you will see that, someone's like, oh, I took it in the morning and it was normal. Cool. It's supposed to be high. If I would have taken my blood work in the morning for cortisol, I also would have been quote unquote okay. But then I did my Dutch test, which is a 24-hour urine sample test. And we do offer those. I found that my cortisol just didn't come down. It just stayed up. So if I would have just tested it in the morning, I would think I'm normal when really I'm struggling with cortisol dysfunction. And the symptoms that I experience are absolutely coinciding with that. But because the blood work said I was normal, then I was normal, right? This is why understanding how things fluctuate throughout the day is so incredibly important. And then it also has a metabolic role. So we actually see, like I mentioned, cortisol has a massive role in your blood sugar by releasing sugar into your bloodstream in times of stress to help support your brain and muscle to quote unquote fight the bear or run away from the bear, to target this stress, right? Even though you might just be sitting there having a bad body image day, right? So we do know that during perimenopause and menopause, as progesterone and estrogen decline, we become more sensitive to cortisol. It does not take nearly as much to see that cortisol go up. And that can lead to cortisol-driven fat storage. And this is something that we see in women all the time and also negatively influences their hormone balance. So when we have lower estrogen and progesterone, we don't have that stress buffer anymore. But we also know that when cortisol is high and we're in chronic levels of stress, we see that hormone production decreases. So low estrogen and progesterone increase cortisol, but then also high cortisol is going to tank your estrogen and progesterone even more. We're going to see that it also has that negative side effect on blood sugars, right? We have lower energy, more energy crashes. We see muscle loss. We see sleep issues. We see thyroid function take a hit. We see our gut health get worse. So we have more bloating, more sensitivities, leaky gut type things, more autoimmune conditions. We see our liver health get worse. And this is all because of stress. And yet we cut the calories and we're down there for too long, causing even more stress, making all of that worse, which is why you can't lose weight, which is why you are struggling, which is why you need to learn how to A, heal your body first, and then B, do fat loss appropriately. So when we cut calories, we see like in the short term, if you do a short fat loss phase, the way you are supposed to, the way we do it with our clients, is that we see a slight increase in cortisol, which is a normal response, right? It's a stress on your body. That's how our body is supposed to respond, right? And a little bit of cortisol elevated, not chronically, but a little bit of cortisol can actually help mobilize stored fat for energy and can be beneficial for fat loss. However, if we are struggling with insulin resistance and high insulin levels at the same time as higher cortisol, that actually shuts that system off and leads to fat storage, which again, not helpful and what is most of us are actually dealing with. We also see that short-term calorie deficit, moderate calorie deficit can actually help improve your focus and energy, which is why like fasting or calorie cutting can initially feel energizing for some, where people are like, oh, I did fasting and I felt so good. This is why you have that short-term increase in cortisol. But the issue is many of us fast forever. We fast for too long. In fact, the next episode that I'm doing is all on fasting. You'll learn so much there. But you start feeling good at the beginning because you have this like alertness and cortisol. But then if you fast forever, you lose that. And what happens is you see like from sustained calorie deficits, like similar to what happens when you're fasting for too long, is that and you're paired with high stress. So you've got life that's changing, the hormones are dropping, lack of sleep, we've got emotional stress is going to lead to that chronically elevated stage of cortisol, which is going to lead to fat storage. And this is why people are like, man, fasting's not working anymore. That's why. Because you surpass the time of benefit. There's a limit, right? Where some is good, more is not better, right? Better is better. And understanding how it impacts your body is important. So this can lead to abdominal belly fat and lead to weight loss resistance, which is why so many women are like, man, my cutting calories isn't working anymore. My fasting isn't working anymore. This is why you pass that threshold of benefits. We also see more muscle breakdown because we mentioned cortisol breaks down muscle for energy. Which is going to slow down your metabolism because muscle burns more calories at rest. You lose more muscle, you're burning less calories in general. So now your calories in, calories out, like the calorie outside is much lower. And then we also see increased cravings and overeating when we have elevated cortisol. So we see the issues with the blood sugars, which are going to lead to crashes, trigger cravings, and that can really sabotage your weight efforts as well. Not to mention you're going to have poor sleep and energy altogether. When we sleep poorly, we see that we lose less body fat, we lose more muscle, we have worse hunger hormone levels. So our fullness cues aren't as good. So we tend to overeat, which is not good, right? And our hunger increases. So our hunger hormones increase as well, which is, again, not a recipe for success. And poor sleep is going to further increase your cortisol levels even more. So if you're struggling with sleep, doing fasting and cutting calories is probably not the thing that's going to help you. It's going to make it worse. The poor gut health, the inflammation, the liver health that comes with high cortisol levels as well. An inflamed body will not lose weight. It won't. That is something that we really need to get to a better understanding of. And dealing with stress increases inflammation. Inflammation increases stress even more. So then we have that crazy cycle. Inflammation also makes blood sugar control worse. Poor blood sugar also triggers inflammation. So you got that cycle going as well. So it's really important to understand how All of these things interact together. This is why you can't just isolate things to one single problem, because it doesn't work that way. And then, of course, it's going to contribute to your insulin resistance. So here are just a few signs. There's many. I've done a whole podcast on cortisol, like I mentioned, but a few signs for you to watch for. Persistent abdominal weight gain, so belly fat, despite cutting your calories and dieting. Difficulty sleeping or waking up feeling unrested, or waking up between 1 and 4 a.m. Energy crashes, particularly in the afternoon. Irritability, anxiety, and trouble focusing, that brain fog. Increased cravings, again, specifically for the sugary sweets like the baking and the donuts and the chocolate, all those kinds of things. Bloating that gets worse as the day goes on. That's a clear sign of stress bloat. That's a clear sign of cortisol elevating throughout the day. And an increase in your hormonal symptoms. So the hot flashes, the night sweats, all those things. So how can we cut our calories without seeing cortisol go to crap? Because if we stay up high for too long, then we see it be chronically low. And you have to do the same things to improve cortisol, to lower it as you would to raise it, because it's all about taking stress off of the body, 100%. So here are some things to do, right? Avoid extreme calorie deficits. Like we mentioned, we only want to be like in a 10 to 20% deficit of your maintenance, but you need to know what that maintenance actually should be, because many of us are not even close to eating at our maintenance. Prioritizing stress management. Like I mentioned, this could be mindfulness, meditation, yoga, stretching, deep breathing, journaling, gratitude. This could be crossword puzzles, whatever you want it to be. Balancing your workouts. So strength training, like I mentioned before, doing your 2-minute rest, lifting heavy, moving slowly, avoiding excessive cardio or high intensity interval training in a calorie deficit, because those can overstimulate your calorie or cortisol production. Can HIIT help some people? Yes, if you are in a good position, HIIT can be beneficial. But if you are not getting enough good quality sleep, if your energy is crap, if you are dealing with cravings, if you are struggling with blood sugar, if you are struggling with the weight gain, HIIT is not appropriate, because your body is telling you you're overstressed. Stress plus stress does not equal less stress. End of story. Improving your sleep, like I mentioned, massive. Eating in a way to stabilize your blood sugar. So focusing on having protein, carbs, and veggies at every single meal. You're eating most of your veggies and protein first before dipping into those carbs. So having a starter salad before having your pasta. And taking diet breaks. Again, what that looks like is very individualized for most people. Is it interesting that the same things that are going to improve your blood sugar are also the same things that are going to improve your cortisol levels? Yes, because those two work in tandem together so much. I hope things are starting to click here. Now let's talk about ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hunger signaling hormone. It is produced in your tummy, in your stomach, and it's released when your stomach is empty, signaling your brain that you are hungry and that you should probably eat something. So it also helps regulate your energy balance. So ghrelin levels increase before meals and drop after eating to help regulate meal timing and portion sizes, so that we're hungry at the same times of day, that we're eating the same amount of volume of food every day. Interesting, right? Keep that in your mind for later. And it also helps influence your metabolism. It also helps with growth hormone release, which is really important in building muscle mass and repairing and recovering from your body. And it also is going to play an influence on fat storage. So what happens to ghrelin in perimenopause and menopause? Well, hormonal changes, of course, are going to influence everything like we've talked about. So lower estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen helps suppress your appetite. So when estrogen comes down, it counteracts some of ghrelin's effects. So appetite becomes less efficient, making ghrelin's hunger signals stronger, because there's not estrogen there to help. Because estrogen helps tell you you're full. Ghrelin tells you you're hungry. When estrogen declines, boom, now your hunger is like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry, right? Low progesterone is going to further disrupt your appetite control, leading to increased hunger and cravings, which again makes weight loss very challenging. We see sleep disruptions. So poor sleep, which is very common in perimenopause and menopause, can increase your ghrelin levels and decrease leptin, which is your satiety hormone that makes you feel full. So that's going to result in increased hunger and reduced feelings of fullness. So this is something I actually did on myself. I kept track of hunger and how much I ate and how much I was sleeping. And I did this with a Fitbit way back in the day. And the days that I got less, 6.5 or less hours of sleep a night, I ate 300 to 400 calories more a day. And like I was hungry all day. So I knew that in order to improve my hormones, my hunger signaling, my body composition, right, trying to stay lean, I needed to get at least 7 hours of sleep because otherwise I would eat anything that was in front of me. It was terrible. And then also there's that stress cortisol interaction. Interesting how cortisol is made in other parents, right? Chronic stress and elevated cortisol can enhance Ghrelin's hunger stimulating effects, making weight loss even harder. So low estrogen, poor sleep, and high stress increase the hunger signaling in your body. So you might be like, oh, when I'm stressed, I don't eat. Yeah. And then once you get home, you eat the entire pantry. This is what's going on. So how does cutting calories affect your Ghrelin levels? Well, when you restrict calories, Ghrelin levels respond by going up because your body doesn't want you to go hungry. It's trying to tell you to eat more. This is part of your body's natural mechanism to survive, right? So short term, what does that mean? You're going to see some increased hunger. This is normal. When you cut calories, when you're trying to eat less, obviously hunger is going to go up. Your body's just trying to compensate, right? However, this can lead to some cravings, right? So you got to try and navigate that. You're also going to see enhanced food reward sensitivity. So higher Ghrelin levels make food, especially like your quote unquote junk foods, so the chips, the chocolates, the donuts, taste more appealing. So when your Ghrelin levels are high because you're not eating enough food and because estrogen has gone down and because you had poor sleep and because your stress is higher, it's going to make food, your highly palatable foods, taste more appealing, which makes it a lot easier to overeat. It's not just a lack of willpower. This is actually physiologically happening in your body. This is in the short term. In the long term, if we are cutting our calories for too long or our calorie intake is too low, we see persistent elevation of Ghrelin. So it's higher all the time, making sustained weight loss really freaking hard. This is one reason why so many diets fail, because the hunger can become overwhelming. And then you go from eating really low calorie to, really a lot. And when after a fat loss phase, your body is like a sponge. It is so sensitive to an increase in caloric intake that it will store everything as fat. This is why coming out of a fat loss phase appropriately, which is what we teach you in coaching and our group coaching, is so important, because otherwise you're stuck on this weight loss, weight gain cycle until eventually the weight loss attempts stop working. And we have to address and fix that. So your body is going to perceive that calorie restriction as a threat, as a stress, and it's going to encourage Ghrelin to go up because it wants you to store energy. And then again, like I mentioned, you have that weight gain post-dieting, because even after weight loss, Ghrelin levels are going to stay higher for a period of time, which is a major driver of weight gain, which makes hunger essential for long-term success, right? So you're trying to manage that hunger gets a lot harder and something you got to do for the rest of your life. So this is something that you need to be aware of. So what are some signs of Ghrelin imbalances to watch for? Persistent hunger, even after eating a full meal, which is also one of the ones for insulin dysregulation. Intense cravings, which is also common with high cortisol and high insulin. Interesting. Difficulty sticking to a calorie deficit due to hunger. Emotional eating triggered by stress or poor sleep. So how can we make sure this doesn't happen, or how can we manage it when you're in a fat loss phase, when you're in calorie restriction? Again, a moderate short-term deficit. One, you want to eat satiating foods. So high fiber foods, high protein foods, those are slow digesting. They are going to help keep blood sugar stabilized, keep you full longer, and actually help lower Ghrelin, that hunger hormone. So that's why you want to have protein and fiber in every single meal. This means your carbohydrates. Carbohydrates come from fiber. Have your potatoes, have your rice, your oats, your whole grains, your fruits, your veggies, beans, legumes. Important. So that's number one. Number two, avoiding extreme calorie deficits. Weird. This is also what we talked about with insulin resistance and high cortisol. Eating regular meals. Structured eating patterns with regular meals and snacks can help stabilize Ghrelin levels and prevent it from extreme hunger or it rising too quickly. So this is why we're having meals every day, aiming for the same time, aiming for some routine, Because guess what? If one day you skip lunch, the next day you don't, you eat too little or try to skip breakfast to save your calories for later, that's messing up ghrelin big time. And then you get to when you actually eat and it's so uncontrollable, and also the stress and the blood sugar issues that come with that. Now you're hooped. This is why you want to have a meal every 4 to 5 hours, starting with breakfast, having 25 grams or more of protein at each meal, pairing that with a starchy carb that has some fiber in it, and then you can have your snacks in between. So important. And then also, next one, prioritizing sleep. Interesting. This was also mentioned in the other ones. Managing stress, also mentioned on the other ones. Staying hydrated. Dehydration can actually amplify your ghrelin levels. It also increases inflammation, and it can also increase bloating. Adequate water intake can help you so much. And then again, taking diet breaks, which again is going to be individualized for everyone. Interesting how the lot of these, what to do to manage it, is the same in all of them. Interesting, right? Next one is leptin. What does leptin do? Appetite regulation. Leptin is produced by your fat cells, and it is released into your bloodstream. Its primary role is to signal the brain, specifically the hypothalamus in your brain, of where your body's energy stores are at. High leptin signals or levels signal satiety and reduced appetite, while low levels are going to increase hunger. So if you have high leptin levels, you are not going to be as hungry. You're going to feel full, satisfied. If leptin levels are low, you are going to be hungry. Leptin also helps influence your metabolism, so how good your body is at burning calories. When leptin levels are high, your body feels safe to burn calories. It's like, oh, we have adequate energy stores. Sweet, I can burn fat. When they're low, metabolism slows down to help conserve energy, leading to fat storage. And then leptin works in tandem with other hormones like ghrelin to maintain energy balance. They work together, right? One tells you you're hungry, one tells you you're full. They work together. So leptin in perimenopause and menopause, if we have leptin regulation that's not so great, it can be challenging for weight loss. Shocking. So low estrogen, again, how is estrogen involved with everything? Very interesting. Estrogen plays a role in supporting leptin sensitivity. As estrogen starts to decline, leptin signals become less effective, leading to increased hunger and fat storage. So the leptin that you have isn't sending enough of a signal. So remember, when leptin is high, it tells us that we can burn calories and that we are full. If leptin is low, then our body stores fat, doesn't want to burn calories. It becomes hungry. So now you need even more leptin than before to tell your body that it feels safe, that it can burn calories. So it's like insulin, right? Insulin, if we're insulin resistant, we need more insulin to tell us to open the doors to store sugar. And in the meantime, sugar is being stored to fat. With leptin, if we become more leptin resistant, we need more leptin to tell our body it's okay to burn fat. So if you are insulin resistant and you are dealing with high stress and you are leptin resistant, wow, does that make fat loss hard? And all of those are influenced by high stress and low estrogen levels. Coincidence? No, of course, that's why weight loss is so challenging. However, we're not stressed, right? I'm cutting calories, but I'm not stressed. I'm not sleeping, but I'm not stressed, right? So leptin in perimenopause and menopause. So we talked about estrogen. Then we have a higher fat storage tendency. The body's natural tendency to store more fat during menopause, especially in the belly, just because of estrogen going down, can impact leptin production. Women have high leptin levels, but still feel hungry if leptin resistance develops. That's what I mentioned. Like if you are leptin resistant, it takes a lot more leptin to tell you that, hey, I'm full, we have enough energy here, you can burn fat. And poor sleep. Poor sleep lowers leptin levels and increases ghrelin, creating a double whammy for appetite control, which tells you like it takes a lot more to make you feel full and you're going to feel a lot hungrier. Not so great, right? Because everyone's like, oh, I struggle with sleep. This is why just by improving your sleep, you can change your body composition so much. So how does cutting calories affect your leptin? Well, in the short term, even a short term of calorie restriction can help lower leptin levels. So the reduction signals in the brain That reduction in the signals, the leptin going down, tells your body to store energy because you don't have enough of it, which increases your hunger and also decreases your energy expenditure. Your body isn't as good at burning the stores that you have. And this happens even short term. So if you have leptin resistance, this becomes even more challenging. You have an increased appetite because as leptin lowers in a calorie deficit, you're going to feel hungrier, and your body is going to want to avoid burning fat and wants to store it instead. And when leptin goes down, it slows your metabolism down. Your body gets worse at burning calories, making it harder to lose weight. This is why you can't be in a fat loss phase in a deficit forever, because your body literally will just stop burning calories. Your body will literally just stop burning energy stores. So long term, if you're dropping calories for a long time, if you've done multiple fat loss phases, multiple diet attempts, you become leptin resistant. So your brain no longer is listening to leptin signals. So your hunger persists, and even when fat stores are adequate or they're increasing, your body's like, no, we still don't have enough. Our body's just not going to burn it. And so then we have this plateau effect where if we have chronically low leptin levels or we're leptin resistant, we have a weight loss plateau where fat loss stalls and we can't continue, right? So what are some signs of leptin imbalances to watch for? This is very common. Persistent hunger, even after eating. So this happens with leptin resistance, with cortisol, with ghrelin, and with cortisol, insulin, ghrelin, right? So there's a very big theme here. If you have difficulty losing weight, even if you're in a calorie deficit, intense cravings for the bakings, the donuts, the chips, the chocolate, feeling low energy and sluggish even after meals. Weight gain is concentrated around the abdomen. So all of these things have very common symptoms. So how do we manage leptin to make sure we don't become leptin resistant, so that we can, be able to burn fat so our body doesn't just turn that lever off? Avoid extreme calorie deficits. Prioritize resistance training. Include high leptin foods. So eating nutrient-dense anti-inflammatory foods really helps support your leptin sensitivity. And this is fatty fish like salmon, nuts and seeds, leafy greens like arugula and spinach, brightly colored vegetables, whole grains and legumes, foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids. And everyone's like, oh, this is just like a balanced diet. Yeah, but how many of you are actually doing that? Most of you are not. We're indulging in deep fried foods. How many vegetables do you actually eat in a day? Making sure that you're taking diet breaks, you're managing stress, you're focusing on sleep quality and avoiding processed foods. So you can see, again, all the recommendations are incredibly similar for all of these scenarios. Then we have estrogen and progesterone. Of course, you guys know those are the primary female sex hormones, and they work together to regulate reproduction, your mood, your energy, how many calories your body burns at rest, as well as your fat distribution. And we know these hormones are already fluctuating during perimenopause. They lower in menopause in the years that follow, but cutting calories can further impact their imbalance to each other and their total levels. So understanding how these hormones respond to a calorie restriction is actually really important in order for you to be able to lose weight in this stage of life. So estrogen helps, again, regulate reproductive functions in your menstrual cycle, supports fat distribution, so favoring your hips, your thighs, your belly. Influences your insulin sensitivity. So when estrogen is in adequate amounts, it helps us with blood sugar control. When it drops, we struggle. Estrogen plays a role in our mood, our bone health, our cardiovascular protection, the ability to build and maintain muscle mass. So when it drops, you see a lot of negative side effects. And then if estrogen and progesterone are too low, we start seeing the hot flashes, the night sweats, the irritability, the belly fat. We see that our metabolism starts to slow down. So our body burns less calories at rest. And it's going to result in us storing more belly fat in the long term. So when we're cutting calories, we see a decline in estrogen production. So when it's too low, we see that estrogen starts to decline. Body suppresses reproductive functions to conserve energy. We start having more hormonal symptoms. We see more body fat. We see more potential for, the way that, sorry, my brain's going a mile a minute. Estrogen contributes to so many things like your appetite, your ability to lose weight, to build muscle mass. So all those things are going to negatively affect your ability to be able to lose weight or just make it a lot harder. Because if you're in a bad mood and you're tired and you're irritable and you're losing muscle mass, all those things just really make it a lot more challenging. That doesn't mean you can't lose weight, because we help women do this all the time. So I don't want that to seem like you can't. It's just you need to understand a lot of things have changed internally now, and the way you need to approach fat loss changes. So this is why we can't drop calories as aggressively anymore. And then we have progesterone. It helps balance estrogen. So if progesterone's too low compared to estrogen, even if both of those are low, we start having estrogen dominance type symptoms. We see belly fat accumulation. We see that we lose our calming effect because progesterone helps us feel calm and relaxed. And we see that stress just rolls off our back. It helps regulate our mood. It also helps with water retention and bloating. So when our progesterone starts to decline, we can start seeing a lot of bloating, really sudden increase on the scale because of water retention. And we know progesterone is unfortunately one of those hormones that is first to decline in perimenopause. And that can lead to estrogen dominant type symptoms, like I mentioned, and that can make it a lot harder to lose weight when you are in that estrogen dominant type state. So when we're cutting calories, we know cortisol goes up. If cortisol goes up, progesterone goes down. Low progesterone means you're going to struggle with sleep. And we already talked about poor sleep really makes it hard for you to lose weight because you're struggling with leptin resistance, insulin resistance, cravings, high cortisol. None of those things equal fat loss. So what are some signs and symptoms of low estrogen and progesterone to watch for? It's the classic stuff, right? The hot flashes, the night sweats, the mood swings, vaginal dryness, reduced libido, increased belly fat, difficulty losing weight, bone loss, muscle loss, anxiety, irritability, bloating and water retention, and then an increase in PMS type symptoms, even if you aren't cycling. So how can we support estrogen and progesterone when we're cutting calories? Because we know estrogen plays such a massive role in all the factors that we talked about previously, that if that starts to decline too much, it's obviously going to trigger all those other things to occur, right? So again, it's the same things. We're avoiding extreme calorie deficits. We're managing stress. We're prioritizing sleep. We're doing appropriate strength training. We're taking the diet breaks that you need, but also focusing on some nutrient-dense foods, specifically phytoestrogens, can help a ton. I did a whole podcast on this not that long ago. And this is foods like flax seeds, soy, chickpeas, lentils, which they can really help support estrogen's role. And support hormone balance as well. Having some healthy fats, because you do need the cholesterol from healthy fats to help with hormone production. So this comes from avocados, nuts, seeds, fatty fish. And then also magnesium-rich foods. I like to supplement with magnesium personally in the evening, 400 milligrams before bed. But you can also incorporate more magnesium-rich foods, which you should all be doing anyways, which are your leafy greens, your almonds, even dark chocolate can help support progesterone and reduce sleep or reduce stress so you can sleep better. Then we have our thyroid hormones. So I did a whole podcast on thyroid you can go back to. So I'm going to be pretty brief on the thyroid stuff here now. So thyroid, we have T4. That is the primary hormone produced by your thyroid gland, and it's converted into T3 in various tissues in your body. Then that T3 is the active form of thyroid hormone, which regulates your metabolism or your metabolic rate. So how many calories your body burns. So that's going to influence your energy production as well as multiple other critical functions in your body. And then we have TSH. That's what signals your thyroid to produce T4 to then convert to T3. So together, those all work together to improve your metabolic rate. So making sure your body's good at burning calories, which makes weight loss easier, which is going to influence your fat burning and energy use, obviously. And it's also going to impact your body temperature, your heart rate, and your overall energy levels. So unfortunately, once we hit perimenopause and menopause, our risk of developing hypothyroidism increases substantially because estrogen really helps support our thyroid function. And as estrogen declines, thyroid sensitivity can decrease, which can lead to symptoms of hypothyroidism, which is not a fun time. The increase in stress and cortisol can suppress thyroid function by reducing T3 levels and impairing the conversion of T4 to T3. So now you don't have the active form, which is crucial for your metabolism and how many calories your body burns. So if you're stressed, you are putting so much harm for your thyroid and the ability to see that improve, right? So cutting calories aggressively when you're hypothyroidism is not a great idea. And then you also see fatigue and weight gain, very common in women struggling with thyroid issues. So when you cut calories short term, what happens to your thyroid? Well, T3 production decreases. It slows metabolism, making it harder to lose weight because your body's not as good at burning calories. And the decrease in that T3 production is your body's way of conserving energy when it thinks that you're not getting enough food. So this is why when women eat low calorie for too long or do multiple cycles of this, that they can actually give themselves hypothyroidism. We've seen this so much. Increased production of reverse T3. So what we see is instead of converting to T3, we see reverse T3, and it inhibits metabolic activity. So it slows down your metabolism even more. So you're burning even less calories. And while early weight loss occurs due to reduced calorie intake, the decline in thyroid hormone activity can cause your body to plateau. This is why you can't stay in a low calorie state forever, which is what unfortunately a lot of women have done because they have no idea how much they're eating with some of the programs they've been on. And then we have the long-term effects. So if you've been cutting calories for a long period of time, done multiple cycles of fat loss, cut calories too low, we see chronic calorie restriction and nutrient deficiencies that go along with that, impair that conversion of T4 to T3 that we talked about, which leads to really low energy, weight loss resistance, and ultimately hypothyroidism. We have higher TSH levels as well, which can it tries to get your thyroid hormone to produce more or your thyroid to produce more thyroid hormone because it's like, hey, we don't have enough of this because we know the T4 and T3 levels are going to be lower, but your body's just like not doing it because it's like, we don't have enough energy to do this. We need to conserve it. And then we also see muscle loss. Lower T3 levels can lead to muscle breakdown and slowing down your metabolism even more. So your body's even worse at burning calories than before. So some signs of thyroid issues to watch for are difficulty losing weight, even though you're in a calorie deficit, low energy levels, feeling cold even in warm environments, hair thinning and brittle nails, dry skin, constipation, and unexpected weight gain. So how can we support our thyroid health when we are cutting calories? Well, avoiding extreme calorie deficits and being in them for too long. Avoid overtraining, so not doing the HIIT training, not doing a ton of cardio. Managing your stress, taking the proper diet breaks, getting enough sleep. But also, we have to make sure that we're prioritizing nutrient-dense foods, specifically iodine for thyroid hormone production, selenium that supports the T4 to T3 conversion. So this is found in like Brazil nuts, eggs, and seafood. Zinc is also important for thyroid function. You can find that in meat, shellfish, and legumes. And then tyrosine, which is an amino acid, which is necessary for thyroid hormone production. And that's found in your chicken, your turkey, your fish, your dairy. And the other thing, which I didn't mention on the other ones, is you need to get adequate carbohydrate intake. Low carb diets reduce T3 levels. Let me say that again. Low carb diets can reduce T3 levels, resulting in hypothyroidism. This is why including complex carbs at every meal, every 4 to 5 hours, like whole greens and fruits and vegetables and potatoes and rice and quinoa and oats is so freaking important. This is why we see so many women who have done keto and gone low carb and done a ton of exercise and done the CrossFit, the HIITs, the F45s, the Orange Theories, end up with hypothyroidism because you gave it to yourself from overstressing your body. We see this so much, and it is so painful to witness, like being on a Zoom call when they make that connection, that the choices they made led them there. And it sucks. There's lots we can do, but this information needs to be told to more women because I hate seeing women struggle with this stuff. It's so infuriating that the people who are doing the keto, the people who are, the coaches who are telling you to eat really low calorie, who aren't assessing where you're at, where your metabolism should be, addressing your hormones, that they don't understand how the hormonal changes that you've gone through, the past stressors that you've done, how that's impacted your hormones, your thyroid, and how exactly what they're doing is actually perpetuating the problem more. That is not okay. That is why we are going to be launching a certification, because this freaking matters. It's insane how many women have hypothyroidism or are struggling with their thyroid these days. Absolutely insane. The next hormone I want to touch on is testosterone. What does it do? Very important in women. It is astounding how many women we see come into our program. They do the Dutch test with us and their testosterone is seriously low. And it's a problem because testosterone helps support muscle mass. And when estrogen decreases and we're in a high stress state and we're under eating and over exercises, boom, we see more muscle loss. And we already struggle with muscle loss as we go through perimenopause in the years that follow. Low testosterone will just make that worse. Testosterone also aids in fat metabolism, particularly belly fat. So if you're low testosterone, that's another strike against you. We have less ability to burn fat. High testosterone levels will help you with energy, mood, and motivation. When those things are low, very hard to lose weight. Testosterone helps support your bone density, reducing the risk of osteoporosis, which happens when estrogen declines. And it also plays a big role in maintaining sexual health and function. So unfortunately, testosterone naturally declines with age, and women in perimenopause and menopause can experience a compounding effect due to hormonal shifts. So we see ovarian decline, right? Testosterone production from the ovaries decreases, particularly during perimenopause. The impact of estrogen and progesterone, those changes disrupt the hormone balance, indirectly affecting testosterone levels and its efficacy in your body. Elevated cortisol levels, which again are very common in women in perimenopause in the years that follow, from stress and lack of sleep, further suppress testosterone production. And loss of muscle mass accelerates with declining testosterone as well, making it hard to maintain strength in your metabolism. And we also know it's important for maintaining healthy blood sugar control. So how does cutting calories affect testosterone? Well, a moderate calorie deficit can result in a small decrease in testosterone levels as the body starts prioritizing energy conservation. Like you have a budget, it gets smaller, you cut out your Starbucks, your body's going to cut out hormones. Calorie restriction is going to elevate cortisol, which can also inhibit testosterone production. Cortisol and testosterone have an inverse relationship. As cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down. As cortisol goes up, insulin resistance goes up, leptin resistance goes up, right? We have all of these relationships in the body. That's why you can't just hyper focus on one thing. You need to understand how everything works together. Long term, we can see a significant testosterone decline because your body shifts away from energy-intensive processes like maintaining muscle mass and reproduction. So that's going to lead to more muscle loss, reduced metabolic rate, increased fat storage, all because testosterone decreases. Part of the reason is testosterone decreases, right? We've talked about all the other things that have happened. Lower testosterone levels make it harder to build and maintain muscle mass, like we mentioned, and then leading to low energy, low motivation as well. When you're having low energy, low motivation, it's hard to go to the gym, hard to eat healthier, right? So what are some signs of low testosterone to watch for? Difficulty building or maintaining muscle mass, persistent fatigue or low energy, reduced libido or sexual function, increased abdominal fat, depression, irritability, lack of motivation, weakness or decreased performance in the gym as well. So how can you support testosterone during a fat loss phase when you're cutting your calories? Avoid severe and long-term calorie deficits. Prioritize resistance training. Include healthy fats like avocado, olive oils, nuts and seeds, fatty fish. Make sure you're getting enough protein. Aim for 0.8 grams to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight to a max of 150 typically. You want to manage your stress. You want to prioritize your sleep. You want to avoid overtraining. You want to eat a balanced diet, again, including zinc, vitamin D, magnesium. These are all helpful for improving testosterone production, supporting those hormone pathways. And now we have one last one here. We are going to talk about growth hormone and then kind of summarize everything here for you. So growth hormone helps so much with fat loss because it helps mobilize fat stores and encourages fat breakdown, making it essential for fat loss. It helps stimulate protein synthesis and muscle growth and repair, which again is very important for blood sugar control and also for increasing how many calories your body burns at rest, making weight loss easier. It plays a role in managing bone density, which is important because that gets worse as estrogen declines. It helps with cell regeneration. It helps with immune function as well, so you're not getting sick as often and recovery is quicker. Unfortunately, when estrogen declines, we struggle with growth hormone because estrogen actually helps stimulate growth hormone production. So if growth hormone goes down, it makes fat loss even harder and muscle maintenance more challenging as well. When we see increased cortisol, those stress hormones, we see reduced growth hormone production as well, because those two have an inverse relationship. Higher cortisol, less growth hormone. As growth hormone decreases with age, we're going to see more muscle loss, obviously, a decline in metabolism, making it harder to lose weight, and an increase in fat storage and reduced muscle tone. So you can work out and then not feel like you look toned. This is part of the problem. So how can we, again, support growth hormone when we're cutting calories? What happens to growth hormone when we're cutting calories? Short-term effect, we can see that a moderate calorie restriction short-term can actually increase growth hormone production as the body adapts to reduced energy intake, because it takes some time for it to get the signal. Growth hormone levels will rise as a natural response to lower energy availability, supporting fat loss and muscle preservation during short periods of calorie restriction. Short. It enhances fat burning. It promotes fat breakdown, particularly from the belly, which again is what we're all aiming for, right? And then it also helps improve muscle maintenance, that you're losing more fat and maintaining more muscle mass so you look fit and toned. Long term, though, if we're cutting calories too often, too low, for too long, it can lead to a decline in that growth hormone production, which slows metabolism, impairs fat loss, and increases the risk of muscle loss, which we already struggle with during perimenopause and menopause. It will reduce hormone production because your body is like, okay, we need more energy, so we can't keep building muscle. We need to actually break it down for energy, which is the opposite of what you want. We also see that increase in insulin resistance can inhibit growth hormone production. So high insulin makes growth hormone even lower, making fat loss even more challenging. So if you're already dealing with insulin resistance and high stress, you're at a really tough position where growth hormone really isn't doing you any favors to help with the fat loss. And so that metabolic rate slows down, fat loss becomes way more challenging. So what are some signs to watch for? Difficulty losing fat or maintaining muscle mass, increased belly fat despite cutting calories, decrease in strength or endurance during exercise, fatigue or low energy levels, poor recovery after exercise or injury, and decreased skin elasticity or more wrinkles. So how can we support growth hormone when we're cutting calories? Well, avoiding really low calorie deficits for too long, prioritizing exercise that really stimulates muscle growth. So this is the strength training, right? Lifting weights to promote muscle repair and growth. That's going to stimulate growth hormone production. So lifting heavy, again, this isn't going to happen if you're doing 20 reps with 5 pounds. Like, you need to really challenge yourself. You need those 2-minute breaks. Prioritizing sleep. Growth hormone is released during deep sleep. So if you are not getting good quality sleep, you are not producing enough growth hormone, which is making it a lot harder to lose weight. So I hope you can see that poor sleep results in more insulin resistance, more leptin resistance, higher cortisol levels. Our ghrelin is out of whack. Estrogen production and testosterone production and progesterone production all are not in that favor either. So you can see how poor sleep actually impacts literally everything, and why just improving that sleep can make a massive difference in your ability to be able to lose weight. We want to optimize our protein intake. If we don't have enough protein, growth hormone can't do what it needs to do. Managing your stress, and again, including those healthy fats. So what to watch for and what to do when cutting calories to keep all of these hormones happy, so that you're not stuck plateauing, so you're not overstressing your body. So what to watch for? Here are 10 signs that your body is just not ready for fat loss, that you need to come out of it, or that you really have no business being there, that you need to make sure that you're eating enough food first. And for a lot of people, this is what we're seeing, or you're cutting your calories trying to lose weight and you're gaining the weight back, or you're not losing weight, or you're gaining weight when you're cutting calories. So we have hunger and cravings, persistent hunger, especially for sugary foods. This tells us that our leptin and ghrelin is not in a good position. Energy and mood. If you have low energy, low motivation, you're irritable, you're struggling with mood swings, you're likely dealing with cortisol issues, low testosterone, low thyroid, low estrogen, low progesterone. Sleep issues, poor quality sleep or difficulty sleeping. This impacts all of them. All of them. If you are dealing with plateauing weight loss, like you're struggling to lose weight despite calorie restriction, again, this could be all of them. Abdominal fat gain, increased belly fat, even though you're cutting calories. This is a beautiful combination of cortisol and insulin, and leptin's in there too. Muscle loss. This is low testosterone, low estrogen, low growth hormone, low thyroid production. If you're struggling with dry skin and hair thinning, brittle nails, or signs of aging quickly, this can be thyroid, estrogen, growth hormone, testosterone, cortisol, metabolic slowdown. So you're finding that you're more cold, sensitive to the cold, metabolism is slowing down. You are finding it hard to be able to do things, like you just don't have the energy to do it. This can be thyroid and leptin as well. And then if you're struggling with digestion and bloating, clear signs that your body is like, nope, we're not in a place where cutting calories is going to be beneficial, and that you'll even see the changes that you want. Most of the weight loss that you see, if any, is going to come from muscle, which you don't want because then your body fat percentage is higher. And then when you come out of it, you're way more likely to gain weight. So what should you do? Well, when you're cutting your calories, we want it to be moderate. So 10 to 20% reduction in your maintenance calories, but you need to know what is your maintenance needing to be at first. If you are not there, you have no business cutting calories. Again, we can do that for you with the calorie assessment call, or you can join our group coaching program. You want to eat nutrient-dense foods, proteins, right? We want to make sure we're eating those first. We want to make sure we're having enough vegetables as well, and then carbs with fiber. Incorporating strength training, massive. You want to prioritize your sleep. Having a bedtime snack that has carbs and protein can make a massive difference because the carbohydrates will actually lower cortisol. It will increase melatonin. And we know that when cortisol goes down, growth hormone can go up, our hormone production can go up, our blood sugar gets better. And then pairing that carb with a fat or protein is going to help stabilize your blood sugar through the night. Because if your blood sugar drops, cortisol spikes and wakes you up. So this is where having some popcorn and a turkey pepperoni stick can be amazing. Maybe you're having toast with peanut butter. Maybe you are having some oatmeal with some protein milk in it. Like there are so many options that you can do for a bedtime snack. It doesn't have to be big, anywhere from 100 to 250 calories an hour before bed, and you're golden. Managing your stress. This is huge. You all need to learn to slow down, lower your heart rate, lower your breathing rate. Hydration and avoiding overtraining, because that's going to lead to inflammation, more bloating, higher cortisol levels. We don't want that. We need to make sure we're taking appropriate diet breaks, refeed days, making sure we're not in a calorie restriction for a long time. What that looks like is different for everyone, but if you aren't doing this properly, we're going to see weight loss plateaus from the thyroid, from the leptin, from the testosterone, the growth hormone, and we don't want that. Make sure that you are having enough vitamin D, iodine, zinc and selenium, magnesium, and vitamin B in your diet, because those will make a massive difference in supporting hormone function, hormone pathways, and also they're just good foods to have, and they're typically higher fiber, anti-inflammatory, all the things that you need. You can also take those in supplements if you prefer. And then monitoring your body. You need to regularly assess your energy, your mood, your sleep, your weight loss progress. You can adjust and see what your body actually needs and what it's telling you. We're so focused on the end goal that we're not paying attention to what's causing the issues that are happening right now, preventing you from the end goal. You're trying to skip the whole important part in between, which doesn't work. That's I'm going to get 100 on this test, but I'm not going to learn the material, and I'm not going to study or assess myself throughout the end or throughout the process to make sure I get 100 on this exam or whatever it might be. That doesn't work. You're just hoping, and the odds are that it's not going to go well. And if you were doing well, you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast. So if you want to do this the right way, with guidance, we do have that group coaching program. Applications are open right now. It is filling up quickly. You will join the program, fill out the assessments, track food for 3 days. We will tell you, are you ready for fat loss? Do we have to heal some things first and prime your metabolism so you can go into fat loss? And we are going to support you wherever you are at, give you exactly what your body needs, learn your body with you to teach you exactly what you need for your body to respond. Details for that are going to be in the show notes for you. I hope to see you soon and be able to work with you. I cannot wait. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.